Hello, my name is Aniya Holt, and I'll be discussing my oral proficiency YouTube video presentation. To start this off, I hope I'm saying her name correctly throughout this whole presentation. But Adichie's talk was very inspiring to me as she discussed the censorship, book banning, and rush that comes with banning books. She argued that banning books in the U.S. signifies an increasing culture of sensitivity in which difficult truths aren't being revealed or addressed how they should. Excuse me. For this assignment, I will be agreeing with Adichie against banning books. Banning these books will deny young people the development of certain skills, especially children, teenagers, basically all grade levels, honestly, from K to 12, pre K, even daycares. So, without further ado, let us continue with the presentation. So, the first point that I pointed out during this whole presentation was 2 minutes and 57 seconds in the YouTube video. And that is when, I don't know if this was a point, but it was basically Washington's Post that reported 75% of children picture books feature LGBTQ themes. Now, Adichie is correct that banning books won't be effective or address any issue. Or solve any issue. But it's important to have these conversations about what is suitable for these children. Kids that are 5 and under shouldn't even be taught this subject as taught anything about LGBTQ as it's not appropriate for them. And many don't feel like it's an issue. I know society doesn't believe it's an issue because society doesn't really care. But it is an issue for young children when they are being taught this and they have no idea what they're being taught. So the fact that they're taught this from a book or anything is a huge issue. Um, Parents, schools, and libraries should be informed and responsible for this issue because kids are learning at school every day. Kids learn from their parents. Kids learn from libraries everywhere. And I feel like that it is very disgusting that they're teaching 5-year-olds and below on trans, being gay. Now, I get it if you live in a same sex household, you learn that your parents are, you know, but it doesn't really matter because it's not like it matters on what you're teaching the children. Like, if you're not protecting or if you're not, what is the word I'm looking for? Excuse me. You have to properly teach them what's right and what's wrong. And teaching them they will know what's right and what's wrong. They will know the difference. They will know the similarities. So I feel like that instead of banning children's books for transgenders, although that is definitely something that should be done, but I feel like this needs to be discussed more than being hid away. Because children don't even know the definition of LGBTQ. They don't know the definition of being gay, trans, or anything. So this should all just be discussed by teachers, parents, and yeah. Another thing that I wanted to mention was that I got this from TikTok, so I think it relates to this, and it's very inappropriate. But I recently viewed a viral TikTok video of a transgender man dressed as Miss Rachel Miss Rachel's crowds normally go from babies to 5-year-olds, maybe older, but he's addressing that it's okay for children to learn about transgenders and how it feels for a boy, that it's okay for a boy to feel like a girl and a girl to feel like a boy. And his whole TikTok was based on transgender for kids, like teaching kids how they feel and what they should know, what they shouldn't know actually. And I found that incredibly inappropriate and definitely disgusting. Something I would never teach my children at that age. And children can't even comprehend that subject matter. Um, it is a certainty of deficiency in knowledge and accountability that needs to be addressed. Books serve as educational tools for children, teenagers, and adults. Children have their section of books that are for children. Teenagers have their section of books that are for teenagers. Adults have their sections that are for adults. No kid should be learning about transgender until they're probably old enough to even understand what it means to feel like a girl or trans. So, this whole point was very inspiring. I do like talking about it. So, I'm going to go to the next one. My second point what from discussion was how history books are now an issue. When I was in school, history was a basic thing to be taught. Nothing inappropriate about it, just teaching us about the past, what we should know. We did have white people in there. I don't think they felt uncomfortable. We looked at each other, but it's a joking wise. So nothing really serious. It's not like we took this as, you know, uncomfortable because we're learning about things that the teacher want us to feel comfortable about, like want us to learn. They put it in a manner where we're not uncomfortable, where we like to discuss this and we want to discuss this. We know what's right and what's wrong. Although I think children, because let me go back a few steps. Florida recently restricted laws to certain history events that should be discussed. And they feel like children are uncomfortable with them. And I think it's just the way children are being taught these history events. Like children feel at ease learning about their own heritage. And when they feel discomfort, if they feel discomfort, it shouldn't even be an issue. They should have the right and freedom to feel and express how they feel. When the subject is communicated, properly to children and they when it's communicated properly, they won't feel uneasy. In fact, this is very eye-opening to some children because now they want to learn more about it. But it's up to who teaches that to, get the kids settled, make them feel like they want to learn this topic. Um, I feel like banning history books is also disgusting. I mean, history has been a part of our education for God knows how long. It is essential for helping children, teenagers understand where they come from, their legacies, their ancestors, you know, things that happened back then. These are important lessons that young people need to be taught. Well, all in all, I find this situation somewhat a little racist, because it seems like there is a reluctancy to address our historical experience. Like I feel like the government don't even want us to know what happened back then. They just wanted to keep it a secret. And I really don't know why, but that's what I feel like. Point 3. So this topic addresses it just addresses general book ban in general. Prohibiting books will never resolve any type of issues. It creates a crisis for young individuals. Bans restricting young readers from developing critical this let me go back. Restricting banning books restricts young people from developing critical thinking skills and empathy. Adichie said in a YouTube video, she argues that protecting young people from challenging subjects diminishes their capacity to navigate the complexities of the real world. Without facing challenges and experiences in this world, how are you going to get ready for the real world? This subject has never been challenging. They make it challenging for us. Without knowing or facing challenges, you would be uninformed, lacking knowledge. You'll be, what's that word? You be in, you'd be illiterate. And while the society may not even prioritize our education, our views seem insignificant. The society only really wants to dismantle valuable teaching and use this against us. I think there are certain subjects that shouldn't be included in this curriculum, but removing Black history will it's just inappropriate, shocking, and it's horrible. And I also wanted to point out that many people who advocate for or support book bans often haven't read the books themselves, like they said in the YouTube video. It's puzzling how can excuse me, it's puzzling how they can call for the banning of history books in schools when students aren't even receiving proper education on these subjects. Now, I recently looked at it was a podcast by Emily Hanford. It was titled "Why Aren't Kids Being Taught to Read?" And she basically discusses how children aren't being taught anything in school. Like they can't read. The reading levels are low. Everything is just not there like how it should. And it was a graph she showed on that podcast. And the graph represents the reading proficiency of 4th and 8th graders. Now, this is shocking. This has been going on for years, but this is still very bad. 4th graders' reading proficiency is higher than 8th graders' reading proficiency, which there should be an explanation for why that is. Why aren't 8th graders learning what they should? And why are 4th graders higher than 8th graders? It's ridiculous. The 4th graders have outperformed the 8th graders in reading proficiency over the years. With that in mind, it's worth discussing the issue of banning books that children and teenagers aren't even engaging with in the first place. So this book ban is completely nonsense. And it was also somebody in my 6th grade. When I was in 6th grade, I had a student. He couldn't read a sentence. And he wasn't even in a special ed class or anything. They allowed him to skip certain things, which is ridiculous. How are you banning books that aren't even teaching anyone? It makes no sense. To conclude, this presentation, Adichie cautions that prohibiting diverse perspectives, particularly from people of color, marginalized, communities restricts representation and comprehension. Her remarks serve as strong appeal to protect intellectual freedom. This issue of book banning is beyond the books itself. It involves regulating ideas and determining who the right to share their narrative. Book banning has nothing to do with anything. And it's crazy how people want to ban books when people don't even read books. It scares me. But thank you, and this is the end of my oral proficiency YouTube presentation.